We're happy to welcome you on ALLATRA TV. Today, it's a great honor for us to speak with the Chief Rabbi of Kyiv and Ukraine, Moshe Reuven Azman, who represents the All-Ukrainian Congress of Jewish Religious Communities. Rabbi Azman is making tremendous efforts to support Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, both inside the country and on the international stage. We are very, very, very happy to welcome you here in Washington today. Thank you so much for everything you do. We're following your work. We see all of your international activity and everything you're doing to make sure that assistance is reaching Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me to this broadcast. Well, first of all, not everything I do. This is only a small part, so to speak. It's not that I kind of boast about it. I believe that every person in such a difficult time, in a time of war, is obligated to do everything they can, and even what they think they cannot. That is why I try to do both what is visible and what is invisible. Because when a person believes in what they are doing, when they are present, and see that many people are facing danger to their lives, that people are suffering in tragedies, then here one cannot, so to speak. One must not be shy. One must set things aside. Even among us, the study of the Torah is set aside, and people roll up their sleeves and go out to save lives.
That's true. And here, before asking the next question, I'd like to mention at least a small part of what you've done. You're really doing an incredible amount of work, both visible and invisible, as you said. You also lead a large volunteer center at the Brodsky Synagogue, which has coordinated the evacuation of more than 40,000 people from active combat zones and provides food, medications, and first aid supplies to civilians and hospitals. You also founded the Anatevka shelter village in 2014, which provides housing, medical care, and education for displaced people. And through your organization, you've essentially built a community infrastructure in Ukraine, including a public cafeteria, a school, and other essential services. And so, what do all of these initiatives mean to you personally? And what values, what inner convictions truly drive you when you do all of this?
You know, first of all, you name many of the things that we do, but I think it would be more accurate to ask, and I write this down for myself differently. What have we not done yet? That's what I write. Meaning what we have done, we have already done, fine. But what we have not done, maybe there is still someone. How many people are still left without our help? How many still need assistance? What drives me is what the Torah, our holy Torah, teaches. First of all, that when people are in trouble, a person cannot remain indifferent, cannot sit and say, "This doesn't concern me." In other words, if you are walking past a river and you see a person drowning, there are many people who would simply say, "Oh, I'm late, someone is waiting for me, so what if he's drowning? What does that have to do with me?" But no, you are obligated to stop. You are obligated to rush in and save that person, because the worst thing possible is indifference. Coldness and indifference. And when people are cold and indifferent, that often leads, well, to wars. When some are indifferent, then tyrants, for example, begin to act and do whatever they want. That is what inspires me. I'll give you one example. At the beginning of the war, we brought from Israel, in total, about 500 medical backpack kits, red backpacks, containing everything needed to save a life. And as you know, life-saving in the very first minute, when a person is wounded, for example, is critically important. Life and death depend on it. At the beginning of the war, there was nothing to save people with. And so I simply distributed these backpacks to everyone who asked for them. Then, after some time, a few weeks, a few months, feedback started coming in. People began to say, "Thanks to your backpack, one person was saved." Then 2 people, then 10 people, then 30 people. And suddenly you realize, wow, this is probably the most important thing you can do. This wow moment. You've already done something in your life, something truly essential. You know, people often compete over whose car is bigger or more expensive, whose house is better. And I say, let's compete instead in who has done more good and done it better. Sometimes people ask me, "Oh, is he doing PR?" No, I'm not doing PR. I don't need PR. It doesn't make my life better. So why do we share all of this publicly? To tell people, let's do better than I did. Odi, let's do more. Because there are so many people who need help that even you, and you, and you, all of us together still won't manage to do everything. That's why we have done what we could. And we will continue to do more, and to do it better, and with higher quality.
I believe it's true that this is the best kind of competition there can be. That's true. Over the years of your life's work, you have truly helped an enormous number of people in Ukraine. And is there some particular story that especially stayed with you? One that you encountered and that strongly influenced your view of the world overall?
You know, there are many such stories, actually. I can't even single out one in particular. Since the beginning of the war, I have been under heavy shelling. At times, there was a real danger to life, and not only to my life. My grandchildren were there, for example. Children, grandchildren, and hundreds of refugees. Elderly people, women, children. And in moments like that, you completely rethink your life. When you realize that money, for example, suddenly no longer matters, that it's lost its value. To save a person, you can give any amount of money. In my case, I had money, and I paid when it was necessary to evacuate people from combat zones, from places where people were sitting in attics, in basements, and people were naming crazy sums because no one wanted to go and rescue them, and I paid. Because what is saving a human life, and what are pieces of paper? So for me, that was the most significant period of time, when it becomes very clear to you what truly matters in life and what doesn't. Moreover, there is something else that is particularly important. I met many people who revealed themselves. In war, people reveal who they truly are. Either their good essence comes out, or the opposite, and the overwhelming majority were people about whom I would never have said that they would become heroes. And suddenly, a person who is quiet, modest, whom no one noticed or heard, suddenly shows heroism. I saw many such people. I think that is what has influenced me the most.
It is known that you helped organize the visit of Pastor Mark Burns to Ukraine, the spiritual advisor to Donald Trump. Could you please tell us why you felt it was important for him, as a religious leader, to see the situation in Ukraine with his own eyes? And overall, do you consider spiritual diplomacy a key tool for solving global problems?
That's a very good example, because my friend Rabbi Yaakov Lichkin introduced me to Mark Burns. We went to see him where he lives, in Greenville, North Carolina. We met him and talked. I suddenly realized that much depends on spiritual leaders, because people believe them, people trust them. I met with him 3 times in America. The second time at President Trump's inauguration, he invited me to speak. I spoke to about 1,000 people then, and that was very important to me. We met again after that. By the way, the third time we met was here, in this place. I told him, come to Ukraine. Come see with your own eyes. One thing is, when you tell someone, a person might believe you, but then say, well, I don't know, maybe he's right, maybe he's not sincere, maybe he's hiding something. I told him, I'm not hiding anything. Fly over and see it with your own eyes. When he came, I met him. He arrived and we started in Anatevka, our little miracle town. From there, we went to Bordyanka, Bucha, and Irpin. After seeing it all with his own eyes, everything changed for him. Because before that, he says himself, and that is, by the way, a commendable quality. Yes, I was wrong. I was against helping Ukraine. Not many people will say I was wrong. But he found the courage to say it. Then we met with leaders of religious denominations, and they laid out documents for him, showing how many religious sites and homes were destroyed, how many clergy were killed, how many Ukrainian children were abducted by Russia, and so on. Everything was documented and verified. When he saw all of that, and we also went to a hospital, met soldiers and talked with ordinary people, everything was open. No one deceived him. It was, go, see, talk to the people. And in 2 days, his outlook changed. He came back and began to say that America first means helping Ukraine. It doesn't matter which party, it doesn't matter who the president is. You must help the heroic Ukrainian people who are defending their independence and democracy, and in effect, defending other countries too. I'm grateful that he came and saw everything and that he continues to speak the truth every day. I really thank him for that. I believe we should bring as many people as possible. Just recently, I was in Israel at the Wailing Wall, together with Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister, Taras Kachka. A delegation was at the wall, and we met thousands of pastors who had come from America. We met them there, and among them was an acquaintance of ours, also a pastor, Michael Evans. We told him, "You came to support Israel, and now please come to Ukraine. Bring 1,000 pastors, even 500, 300, however many you can bring. They will come and see with their own eyes, and each of them will then tell the truth to their congregations. Each one reaches thousands, some reach hundreds of thousands. Then everything will be clear." That's why it's so important to bring people, because hearing and seeing are two different things. Hearing is important, but when someone sees it for themselves, there's no arguing with someone who has seen it.
That's true. Thank you so much for everything you do, for what you've already done, and what you keep doing. It's a great honor for us to continue this work. Essentially, carry on your mission by recording Pastor Mark Burns' speeches and spreading them here in the United States, in Ukraine, and everywhere else. So thank you very much. I have one more question for you. Given your extensive international efforts, including meetings with American politicians, various think tanks, and religious leaders, all aimed at highlighting Ukraine's role in defending democracy, what key messages or strategies do you find most effective for ensuring continued and strengthened international support for Ukraine?
You put that in a very complicated way. Let me just answer by simplifying the question. I'll give you an example. This morning, I was taking a taxi from the hotel to get here. The driver and I got to talking. He was a very nice guy, originally from Ethiopia. He asked me, "Where are you from?" I said, "From Ukraine." And he began asking me questions. I answered him. By the time we arrived, it was about a 15-minute ride. I had explained everything to him, and he was shocked. In just 15 minutes, I told him the whole truth as it is. Now, that's one person who found out, and he'll tell others, maybe his family later today. Maybe he'll talk about it at some event, like a gathering of taxi drivers. And then those drivers will tell it to the people who ride in their taxis. Thus, we never know the impact. So, my principle is this. I come somewhere. I have my own connections, people I know, and sometimes things just happen with God's help. Today, for example, I called some friends and said, "Help arrange a meeting for me with a certain person, a well-known, very influential individual." Unfortunately, I don't have direct access to him, and I don't need a meeting just to say, "Hello." I don't need a photo. I need someone to tell him that I'm a serious person who speaks the truth. So they called me back and I said, "Please pass this on to him. Tell him I want to meet. I work with the Almighty. I carry the truth. I just want to talk. I'm not a politician." So I don't know exactly how it works, but I've seen it happen throughout my life when I speak the truth. It is said in the Tanakh, "Send your bread upon the waters, and it will come back to you." Sometimes you throw something into the sea, and it suddenly returns to you, later in a completely different form. That's why our job isn't to do the math, to sit there calculating, "Oh, will this work? Won't it work? How much have I done? What have I achieved?" That's not what I do. Right now, there are many people in Ukraine and really all over the world who are very negative. Why? They say, "Oh, what will tomorrow bring? There's no way out. The war has been going on for 4 years. Everything's bad. They're destroying the infrastructure." But that's the wrong mindset. Right now, we are lighting the Hanukkah candles. Every day we add one more candle. This means we should add more light. There's no point in saying whether things are bad or not bad. That's not up to us. What is up to us is doing good. If each person does something good, then each person's candle can turn into a massive flame. And the advantage of light over darkness as I always say, is that even a little bit of light drives away a lot of darkness. That's my principle. So let's say I come to Washington. I have some meetings lined up, some planned, some unplanned. Often when I arrive, I start with the scheduled meetings. Sometimes they work out, sometimes something falls through, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, another very important meeting comes up. Well, like the one with Mark Burns. I went there to discuss one issue, and then my friend told me, let's go visit a pastor. There's a guy named Pastor Burns. And so we went. We missed our flight that day, right there in Washington. What were we supposed to do? I said, let's get a car. How far is it? An 8-hour drive. I wasn't feeling very well, but I had to drive those 8 hours myself just to make it in time. I couldn't even stop to sleep, and we drove through the day, thank God, but we had to make it. He didn't know who we were, and that was the only day he was available. So we drove and we made it, because I knew we had to try and maybe something would come out of it. I wasn't sure, as I didn't know who he was. I didn't know how he would react. He could have said, you know, I'm not interested in that. Like many people say, we are America. We should help ourselves, not others. But suddenly, something clicked for him. Since then, we've had 3 meetings here. And then he came to Ukraine. This man has actually become a spouting source. A patriot of Ukraine who brings the truth to people. And think of how many people he has already shared that truth with. And it all started with a simple decision. If I had said back then, well, we missed the flight, okay, maybe next time, there might not have been a next time. Because you know how it is. I'm busy. I need to fly again. Then he can't, or we can't. You should always take action. You can't let an opportunity slip by. It's a great example. I think about it now. What if we had given up back then? But we didn't. We took a car right at the airport and drove.
That's for sure. Thank you so much for actually doing that. My next question is quite broad. In your opinion, what is it that unites all people, regardless of their religion, faith, race, or nationality? What do we all have in common? What values and aspirations are truly universal?
We have a lot in common. We all share one great-great-great-grandfather, Adam, the first human. The world was created for the sake of one person, Adam. Then there was the Great Flood, and we have another common ancestor, Noah, who saved humanity from the flood when that generation had fallen into sin and drowned. The Almighty God has given humanity many chances to save itself. Then we had our forefather Abraham, who also carried the faith in one God when no one else believed. At that time, everyone worshipped idols. He was the one who was against it. By the way, do you know why he was called a Hebrew? Because the whole world was on one side of the river. And I don't just mean a physical river, but a philosophical one. The whole world followed idols. And Abraham said, no. The word Hebrew, Ifri, comes from ever, meaning the one from the other side. The one who stood against the whole world and refused to follow evil. And then he began spreading this truth to all people. Later, other religions emerged and accepted God, each with its own interpretations. But there is only one God, the one who created this world. And the main thing that unites all religions, what religion should be, is that it must bring light, and it must bring goodness to people. Because when religion brings evil or darkness, in most cases, it means people have distorted it for themselves to gain something from it.
Leverage.
Yes, using religion for personal gain or for the goals of some group. In reality, as I said, our forefather Abraham, the founder of our religion, how did he start? He set up a tent in the middle of the desert, and travelers, even idol worshippers, would pass through the desert, hungry and thirsty. He made 4 entrances to the tent from all sides, so they wouldn't even have to walk around it. Why? Because they were exhausted. He fed them, gave them water, all for free. The only thing he asked was that they thank God, who provided all of it. So, if all religions unite to do good instead of, well, if they don't do good, it's not really religion anymore. I'm not saying that they have to merge into one. Each faith should maintain its own path, but it must bring light, not darkness. And then everything will be good.
Absolutely. If you had the chance to give one piece of advice to the whole world, especially to the young generation, something every person would hear, what would you say?
Well, think about why you are living. Don't just close your eyes to it. Really think, what are your values and what are they for? For instance, I was thinking today, most people live with the goal of making more money, gaining some respect, or things like that. But I believe there are different priorities. I was holding a funeral the other day, back in Kyiv. People were crying. At every funeral I lead, I always say, a person takes nothing with them when they go. No gold, no money, no jewelry, no cars. So what do they take? They take only their good deeds, what they've done. Why? Because when a person leaves this world, they take nothing material. I show people examples. Let's say someone built an orphanage, and there is a sign saying this person built it. Or there's that building still standing. Someone built it 100 years ago, but no one cares about what that man built for himself. Thank God we have a commandment to provide for our families and to do good. But how much good a person did for others, that's what they take with them to the Almighty. And there, they receive their true reward. Not with money. Let's call it a true reward, given from the heart. So, people, think about why you're living, where you came from, where you're going, and before whom you will ultimately have to give an account.
If you could change at least one thing in the world right now, what would it be and why?
I would want to change myself. I try to change myself, and every person should try to change themselves, because changing yourself is much harder than giving advice to others. We usually know very well how this or that is being done wrong. When people are like, that parliament is bad, that president is wrong, well then go run for president or for parliament. And so, will you be able to stand it? Change yourself? You see how they behave there? Well, for example, there's a kitchen worker, a cook. He shouts, and you tell him, don't shout. Instead, make sure food isn't taken out, that it isn't stolen. It's a small thing, but from that grows something bigger later, because when that cook becomes a deputy, he can already steal on a much larger scale. That's why we start with ourselves. When at your own level, no matter who you are, each person does this. You change yourself, and then you change the world.
Indeed, these are truly beautiful words, and I think this is a wonderful conclusion to our interview. We would be happy to continue these conversations, perhaps during your next visit, and we will be very glad to see you again. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Friends, what I want to say is this. I came here to Washington. Today, Washington is the capital of the United States of America. But Washington is also a world capital because so much depends on what happens here, financially, militarily, and politically. And therefore, a great deal depends on the American president, on Parliament, on Congress, the Senate, and on the American people. So what I want to say is this. It does not matter which party is in power. Support for a just, defensive war must continue. The defense of Ukraine, because the Ukrainian people are standing heroically in defense of their country, their families, Europe, and I believe, the world as well. Because dark forces, what I call the axis of evil, dictatorial countries that attacked Ukraine and Israel, are trying to bring disaster to the world, a kind of flood. It doesn't matter what. The main thing is to kill and conquer. That is why the entire world must stand with Ukraine, because it's only Ukraine's issue. I am not saying that anyone here is mistaken. I am confident that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, is a very wise person. I am convinced that he is thinking about the fact that people are dying, that many soldiers are dying, and therefore everything must be done to achieve peace, but not peace at any cost. Peace must be achieved wisely, so that there will be no more war. I hope that when the Messiah comes soon, and we pray for his coming, there will be no more wars. But until then, we must do everything possible to achieve a just peace. That's how it is. And thank you to everyone who has helped, who is helping, and who will continue to help.
Thank you very much. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes.